Thank you all for coming out tonight. I would like to welcome everyone to the Prospect Heights Natural Resources Commission 10 Years of Restoration. And we have some exciting news before we get started. I would like to introduce a special guest, Barb Cornu, who is the District Director for Cook County Commissioner Scott Britton.
I'm very pleased to be here on behalf of Cook County Commissioner Scott Britton with a resolution of the Board of Commissioners, Cook County, Illinois, in honor of celebrating Prospect Heights Natural Resource Commission 10th anniversary. So this is a formal resolution passed by the board. Whereas April 22nd, 2024 is Earth Day, first celebrated in 1970, whereas the first Earth Day brought together millions of people and gave rise to the modern American environmental movement, whereas sustainable communities is one of the 6 key pillars of Cook County's policy roadmap, and over the next decade, the county is committed to implementing policies that support healthy, resilient communities that thrive economically, socially, and environmentally. Whereas numerous communities in the 14th District have commissions, task force, and plans centered around the environment. Whereas in Prospect Heights, the Prospect Heights Natural Resource Commission was founded about 10 years ago by Dr. Agnes Winarski and turns 10 years old this year. Whereas the Prospect Heights Natural Resource Commission is an all-volunteer network designed to enhance, restore, and manage the natural areas and resources in order to maintain and improve their ecological health and biodiversity. Whereas the Prospect Heights Natural Resource Commission is credited with rooting out invasive species and returning open spaces to their natural splendor. Whereas recognizing the number of individuals who are recognized by their peers as leaders in the environment and natural resource sphere, including these members of the Natural Resource Commission: Dana Severston, Ed Madden, Jill Muska, John Camus, Peter Hahn, Seth Marcus, and Dr. Agnes Winarski. Whereas at the moment, the Prospect Heights Natural Resource Commission is restoring wildlife habitat and biodiversity to the Prospect Heights Slough, a historically important wetland in the heart of the community. Whereas, I'm almost done, the Prospect Heights Natural Resource Commission Education Outreach Program, Nature Speaks, held in partnership with the Prospect Heights Public Library, brings 4 featured regional national speakers to the community. Whereas the hard work done by the Prospect Heights Natural Resource Commission's leadership and volunteers yields benefits to the residents of the 14th District, including floodwater retention, erosion control, air quality benefits. Now therefore, be it resolved, Cook County Commissioner Scott Britton and the Cook County Board of Commissioners do hereby acknowledge and applaud the dedicated stewards of the Prospect Heights Natural Resource Commission, their work to promote environmental justice, climate resiliency, and energy efficiency, which are central to thriving communities. Be it further resolved that a suitable copy of this text be presented to the members of the Prospect Heights Natural Resource Commission as a means of conveying our thanks and congratulations.
But thank you so much. It's really, really nice to get the recognition and appreciation and acknowledgement for the hard work that so many people have done. And so what I'm going to do is just kind of kick things off with a little bit of a background about the commission. It is our 10th anniversary, so it started in 2014 as a formal commission, but its actual roots started a little bit earlier than that. With Agnes and I were neighbors. The McDonald Creek split us up, and she used to bribe me by having me over for some delicious food and adult beverages and talk about all these things, nature and her passion for it, and would corral me into, I think one of the first thing we did was a citizen scientist project where you monitor the creek for macroorganisms to see over time, is the creek getting healthier or deteriorating? And then that kind of morphed into the nature group under previous Mayor Dolly Voley, where we had our Nature Palooza events, which were these educational events that we did in the different natural areas. And then even Friends of McDonald Creek, where we did monitoring of the creek and creek walks to identify blockages to make sure that with a heavy rain event, the creek was going to do its job, and it is the main distribution for storm runoff. And so, but then it really got kicked off when Agnes got together with Carrie Spiegel Halter about starting this official commission. And I remember when, Agnes, you first told me about it, and this is where it's good not to say what you're thinking, because I just remember thinking, girl, you're crazy. But boy, would I have been wrong, and instead I just said, oh wow, that's a great idea, and quite frankly, I did have a little bit of doubts, but boy, have I been proven wrong, because what the commission has accomplished is just amazing. So it started out with 4 commissioners, but then quickly grew, and so this, this very next slide, of course, this is Agnes and Carrie. She has now moved on to many bigger and better things, but I think it was actually at one of the Nature Palooza events that kind of got her involved in the whole, concern for nature and our environment. And what was her major? She went then on to college. Yeah, and so it just started this avalanche of support for the thing that's so important to us and we can't ignore, and that's our environment. So our original commissioners, or our current commissioners, on the far left is Peter Hahn, and then to the right is John Kamish, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. He had a family emergency that he had to attend to. And then next to him is Seth Marcus. And I should point out too, not only is this just a group of committed people, but they're quite accomplished as well. Mr. Hahn is a retired golf course superintendent and very, very knowledgeable on the management of plants in natural areas. John is, actually it's Dr. Kamish, he is a radiologist. And Seth Marcus, who I mentioned, he is a genetic counselor. And then, of course, to further to the right in the very center is our chairwoman, Dr. Agnes Wojnarski, who's a family physician. And then Dana, of course, who's also a accomplished technology creative director. And Jill Moscow as well, who's a executive secretary in the financial services area. And then myself, and I do public relations for Pace Bus. But it's a wonderful group, I have to tell you. I consider them a family, and it's an honor to work with them. So to just kind of kick off some of the areas, we got involved in many of the natural areas in Prospect Heights. This is an overall map of it. In the center, that purple area that you see is what is commonly known as Hillcrest Lake and the South Slough. It's divided by Willow Road, which frequently floods, but that's getting remedied very soon. And quite honestly, Hillcrest Lake is a bit of a misnomer because it's technically not a lake. It's really just a slough as well, not all that much different than the South Slough. And they're really just permanently wetlands. Just across the street is an area that we don't own. I believe that's private property, but we help to manage that. And then just to the north, and that little blue section, I don't know, my pointer is not going to work for that. That's the, correct me, Agnes, what area is that? Heron Pond, I'm sorry, thank you. And then to the north right, that more vibrant green is the ComEd Remnant Prairie. And just south, that blue strip is the ComEd Remnant Sedge Meadow. And then the little chunk you might see there, if you know the Church St. Al's, we do have it was previously a retention pond that was converted into native plants to really, really help with the runoff for that area. And the next slide is a kind of an overall. So this gives you an actual real world view. And, you know, we're technically the Prospect Heights Commission, but you know, we're involved in Wheeling, and you know, we partner with other communities. Matter of fact, Commissioner Britton is formerly with the municipality of Glenview, and they have a wonderful natural resources group there that when we first started, we looked at them with envy and wanted to emulate. This next slide is our very first project, months after starting, which this in and of itself is incredible. I don't know if anyone here has ever tried to get grants for projects, but it is not an easy task. And within months, because of Agnes's hard work, we're actually able to secure a ComEd Green Regions grant. And this was significant. It was $10,000 that was matched by the city and the Park District, and that got everything rolling. It wasn't just for this, so this is the area, the ComEd right-of-way that is just north of Palatine Road and just west of Elmhurst Road. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, and for that I'm going to turn it over to Agnes.
Started. So we're gonna divide this up a little bit and talk about the areas that we've managed and the changes that have occurred over the last 10 years. So this is the slough, but this is actually the slough in 1973. One of our volunteers, Norma Shilkus, provided us with these images, which is really interesting to see. And instead of all the buckthorn that we started with, there were actually willows all along Hillside Avenue. So there's another nice picture. Here, right at the peninsula, where this was all replaced by buckthorn, this was all willows back then. And there used to be an island at Hillcrest Lake. So this is the infamous island that everybody talks about that eventually eroded away. But apparently there was a little path, a little boardwalk or a bridge from the land to the island. So when we started in 2014, this is what the slough looked like. And so everybody loved the slough, and so they wanted to protect it. And by doing so, they decided to just leave it completely alone. And although that seemed like a good idea, it really wasn't, because that's when the buckthorn took over. So over the next 50 years, from the 70s to 2014, even from the 60s, the invasive buckthorn took over. And there was a wall spanning 30, 40 feet in, all around the slough. You couldn't even tell that there was water there or a wetland. So this is what the startup conditions were in 2014. You couldn't even get in there on your hands and knees, no exploring, no birds, no wildlife, no butterflies. It was just invasive buckthorn. This is the other invasive that was all over the slough. This is invasive reed canary grass. So there were patches where it was just 100% reed canary, nothing else. Once again, no butterflies. It's a non-native grass that comes from somewhere else, and this was what we started with. Teasel, that's another one. Many invasives, but this is another one that was right at the slough. And so this is just a close-up view of the buckthorn. One thing we know also is that buckthorn secretes chemicals into the soil that doesn't allow anything else to grow, and it secretes a chemical called emodin, which kills amphibian embryos. It has a 50% mortality on amphibian embryos. So the slough also had much less frogs, toads, and any of the other amphibians. This is another close-up of all those thorns, so it can be difficult to get rid of. And this is another view from Hillside. So that's the startup. So when we started with loppers, of course, permission, and the city and the Park District and the grant, and so we started lopping everything, which was, and every other Sunday we worked from 9 to 12 with volunteers, and it was difficult. We lopped and lopped and lopped, and we still lopping, right? And so you can see during a work day, and we would put the buckthorn out to the side of the road, because at that time we couldn't have brush pile burns yet. So here's all of that buckthorn cut after a work day, working our way through that big thicket. And then Public Works would come every other Monday and chip it and pick up all the debris. So here's just like, I think Dana actually did this. I don't know, how many weeks did it take you?
Yeah, this took, when I first started, I got a pair of loppers from Agnes, and I asked her permission to go ahead and work. So every night when I would come home from work, I worked for 4 hours. It took me a month to punch that hole just to see light.
To
That
just
was
get
probably
through.
45 feet deep, and some of those things were, 8, 10 inches in diameter.
Yeah, a lot of buckthorn.
trunks.
Yeah, some of those trunks were really old. So then everything changed in 2015, so we're moving a year ahead, when we were allowed to use chainsaws, of course certified, and Chainsaw Lewis and Timber came to the rescue, and so we really put a dent in it then. And also in 2015, when we started planting the plants that we received from the grant. So this is after some buckthorn removal. You can see there's no more buckthorn, there's trees there. And you can actually see the water and the rest of the slough. And so with the first ComEd Green Regions grant, part of that was the restoration, the tools, and getting this started, but we purchased native plants because there weren't many native plants at all around the slough. So, and we're gonna go back to this picture on the left-hand side, but these are basically the plants that we purchased with the grant money. And this is our planting. We had everything arranged and everything was gridded out and planned out where the natives were gonna go. And we used hand trowels. We no longer do that. Now we use augers. So we planted out that whole area that used to be buckthorn and just turf grass. One of the really great things that happened when we removed the buckthorn is on the bottom right-hand side, you could see there's wild geraniums. And so when that buckthorn was gone, all of a sudden, all of these things started coming up from the seed bank, things that have been suppressed by the buckthorn for generations. So here is that area. It's just a nice little aerial view of that area that we planted. It's a very small area, but yeah, it was
You see those
7.
2 brown patches, can you go back to that?
Yeah,
The 2 brown patches there is where the buckthorn was. So that's how completely, totally, it changes the soil underneath the buckthorn where nothing grew.
Okay, and we continued our work days. This is something we remember because it was very cold that day, and we tended not to cancel any work days, even for cold weather, but we chose an area that was very secluded, and we had a really wonderful work day. We were taking off our clothes and working on that buckthorn. It was.
Our outerwear.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we had all of these wonderful groups start to join us in our volunteer efforts. So we had the scouts appear, putting a huge dent into all that buckthorn. And we found, actually, that particular day, we found a nest of mallard eggs. And then we started burning the slough in 2017. Now, this is huge and really important. Prescribed fire is absolutely very important. It's one of the most important toolboxes in restoration. And it helps to keep those woody buckthorns from coming back, the baby buckthorns, and so many other values. And we started to see birds come back, but really special birds. So this is the black-ground night heron. I believe it's threatened, could be endangered, but state threatened. And one of the greatest thing was also not only to see him, but we saw juvenile black-ground night herons, which meant that they were nesting now at the slough. So we had been working with the Bird Conservation Network, going on bird walks, and this was all super, really great and exciting to see these changes. And we even started creating habitat. So these are, some of the emerald ash borer killed many of the ash trees and they started falling. And so we asked Public Works, could you drop some of those trees into the slough? And they were like, well, I think we usually take trees out of the water, not into the water. We described the turtle situation that we wanted habitat, and they dropped the tree, and the very next day there's like 15 turtles. And we took pictures and sent it back to Public Works, and it was just really great. And so the biodiversity just started things started coming up. So you have the wild geraniums just popping up everywhere, trilliums, phlox. One of the greatest surprises was the Michigan lily, because that's a pretty rare plant. In the first year, there was 1 Michigan lily. The next year, there was 10 Michigan lilies. Now there's 60 Michigan lilies all over the slough. So that was just very exciting. And then the birds started coming back. So the white egrets. So now we had more frogs, and that's part of what they eat is the frogs. So this is just a great feast at the slough, really. And the shoreline restoration, and then you can see the cardinal flower in the bottom.
And the egrets now hold their annual convention there.
Yeah, me too. All right, so 2017, once again, we burned the slough, and then we put down a lot of seeds. Unfortunately, that year, it also flooded, and so we lost a lot of those seeds, but we keep doing that. And then students from everywhere. So we had students from MacArthur Middle School. We partnered with the Prospect Heights Kids Care. We really started reaching out to the community, and the community came back, and it's just been an absolute pleasure. So they come and help and seed, and we go on walks and tours and planting and seed collection. And so moving on to 2018, everything's really starting to change. We have turtlehead, just the biodiversity, the amount of plant species increased from just a few and mostly invasive to over 80 species of plants. Some of that came from the seed bank. Some of that we reintroduced from locally sourced seed sources from our partners in restoration. And then the shoreline, where there used to be turf grass, now there are blue flag iris and sedges, and that really stabilizes the shoreline much more efficiently than turf grass, that doesn't have deep roots, very, very small roots. And then the trail started to appear, which has also been a really great thing around the slough, to have everybody enjoy the wonderful wetland. So here we have nodding ladies tresses, fire pink lobelia, the cardinal flower, and then monarchs and milkweeds. So where there was teasel, now there's monarch caterpillars and milkweeds, and the trilliums, of course. And then, this happens, the slough floods. This was a particularly bad year, and the water really came up and rushing. And so we've been really having to work with that. Some of the plants really don't like being underwater for days at a time. So we've been really trying to to work with that and try to find the right species that will tolerate the conditions of the slough. Here's what that was. So that was, that was the next year flooding. Although, right, because it was the 100-year gift for the second year in the row, right? I'm reading the words now. The 100-year flood. Yeah. This is one of the most amazing things that happened around the slough. Is the artists that came forward from the community. This was started during COVID, during a very dark time, where artists came together and put forth this art for the community, and it has since moved to Isaac Walton, and is just an absolute pleasure. It really brings the community together, all of the people, and just it's just absolutely amazing. And these are just some really great photos. So, through the prescribed burns, through seeding, through plugging, through invasive control, this is sort of how the slough has been transitioning from what we saw was that buckthorn thicket to this, which is just truly amazing. In 2021, the NRC received our 4th ComEd Green Regions grant, which we used to install a boardwalk all around, because even though there was walking paths, it was really wet and muddy and people couldn't get across. So we thought this was a great opportunity to bring the community together even more, to be able to see all these really special places around the slough. And the money with this grant was only for material. Only for material. It was all volunteers. Volunteers cut the wood, they assembled all of these pieces. I mean, it was just an incredible task. It was also an Eagle Scout project, Felix Wyrick. And so here's some Boy Scouts and Eagle Scouts helping, moving things along. And it was just absolutely tremendous. The whole community came together. Dr. Chris Wood brought his whole ophthalmology friends, and they pounded those stakes in. And we had 2 work days. It was a Saturday and a Sunday, and there was over 20 volunteers. I think it was like 27 and 28, if I remember correctly, that came together for those 2 days and built this boardwalk with their own hands. And it's just absolutely amazing. We had the first pop-up art sale, which is just a pleasure every year. It's something that everybody looks forward to. The cars are lined up all along Hillside, all over, everywhere. It's now attended by hundreds of people. It's just a very wonderful community that's been built around the slough. And 2022, we completed the grant. Part of the grant was also to revegetate part of the areas that had been taken over by cattails with sedges. So we planted out 5,000 sedges, and to our surprise, there's actually native plants that came up from the seed bank as well. So it's been, and then after our 4th ComEd Green Regions grant, ComEd asked us if there was anything that they could do for us. And so, of course, one of these dream come true things would be an osprey pole. So we asked ComEd, well, yes, we'd like an osprey pole. And the very next day, that pole was on Elmhurst Road. Just absolutely amazing. So they came and they installed this osprey nesting platform, which was actually built by community members, by Zeke and Callie and family. And so we have an osprey pole at the slough. No osprey yet. We see them flying around, but sometimes it takes a couple of years. And then the Morton Arboretum donated trees. So there's 15 native trees, mostly oaks, that have been planted. This was another wonderful community event.
That was in celebration of their 100-year anniversary. And it was, they were giving those things out as gifts in order to celebrate.
Yeah. And 2022, another one. So that was the year of the mushrooms. So everything was mushroom based, and everybody, it's just such a wonderful thing. I mean, people from all over bring artwork to this park. It's just absolutely, like, neighbors and schools and children and everybody. It's just such a wonderful, wonderful thing. So look at all those mushrooms. They're just amazing. This year the theme is insects. So
What's the buzz?
what's the buzz? And so the slough has really transformed from being just this sort of, I don't know, neglected, sort of trashy wetland into this really vibrant, beautiful, biodiverse place that has just magic, absolute magic. I mean, it's just a great place to explore. There's thousands of pollinators and birds and amphibians, and it's just such a magical place, and it's just wonderful. It's really transitioned. So this is these are photos of the slough and what it looks like today. So no longer, I mean, where that boardwalk is, that was the 100% reed canary picture that you saw in the beginning. There was just 100% invasive grass there. And right now there's 80 species of native plants that support just an incredible amount of insects. And with all of those insects, they support the food web even more. So it's just really great. The pollinators, and then we have, so right next to the boardwalk, this is a plant. It doesn't look so special, but it really is. This is a plant that came in completely on its own, tufted loosestrife. It's a rare wetland plant that is found in fens and really special wetland areas, and it's just a testament to the fact that the slough is really remnant. You know, the slough, we founded the original land survey maps that showed from the 1800s. So the slough really has native vegetation. It's a really special place. It's a really special place for people and for insects and animals, everybody to connect. Here's some wild hyacinth. Here's some more photos, just to share some of that autumn light and sneezeweed and all the other ones. One of the greatest things is, I mean, we do a lot of, we survey things to see, like, how are we doing? And one of the things that we've done is note the birds. So when we have our bird walks, we do a tally and a list. When we started 10 years ago, there was 50 species of birds that we tallied on our first and second bird walks. Now we have 102 bird species. That is absolutely amazing. I mean, just the increase in the bird population. And you know, you think about these birds, I mean, they all need nesting sites, they all need insects. I mean, when birds feed their young, they feed them caterpillars. And if you don't have those native plants to support the caterpillars, they're not going to have enough to feed their young. So this is just a wonderful, wonderful, yeah, it's just absolutely great. And so we have wood ducks, which are nesting at the slough, several pairs of wood ducks, the black-crowned night heron right there, and then eagles have been spotted too, which is really special. 2 eagles and a juvenile. So they're nesting somewhere in Prospect Heights, but nobody seems to know where. And so, yeah, it's just a really special place. Ignore the teasel on the bottom, that is no longer there. But the walking paths get used even in the winter. I mean, the paths are no longer visible, but all the residents use them, and they know exactly where they are. And it's a magical place in the winter as well. So it's just been really great. And here's another beautiful photo of a sunset around the slough. And this is where the reed canary and the buckthorn was. It's all false asters and just a beautiful view of the slough. And here's another view in autumn. And there's another one at night. And here's just even more photos. And I think that's it.
So when we got our first ComEd Green Regions grant, it was for starting the restoration on the slough, but also creating a prairie out of mowed turf grass. This was a 5-acre site. This is Agnes standing out in the field. She's always been outstanding in the field. Sorry. And you can see, I want you to take particular attention to how tall that, vegetation is that she's standing in. All right, so this was a startup condition, 5 acres of this. And she brought her friend out, Isabella Redolinsky. Now, Isabella is now the second in command under John McCabe at Cook County Forest Preserves. But she's been a longtime friend of Agnes's. So she came out to do quadrat sampling with Agnes, and basically they geolocated these quadrants, and then they sampled what was inside of the quadrant, and then made a recording of it, and then they go back every 2 years and monitor it to see how it's changed. So the first step was to herbicide everything. The Park District had this herbicide truck, and so 5 acres went down. And it turned into this. This was about 3 days before we were supposed to put the seed down, and Agnes realized, oh my God, it will never work. There's too much thatch, and there's just no seed soil contact. So she went on her own, with her own money, and hired Horscher Brothers to clean it up. And they came out with these 2 sweepers, and they raked the entire 5 acres. They created these piles, and then they brought in these giant trucks and hauled it away. There were 9 of them, 9 dump trucks or something like that. 8. And then she flagged out rows so that the seed, people putting down the seed, would not get waylaid off of the path, and would get overseeded and underseeded areas. And we've had buckets of seed that we had collected. There was what, 80 pounds, Agnes?
50
Yeah.
collected and 30 purchased.
All right, and so they went into these buckets, and then volunteers took the buckets, and out they went. So 84 pounds of seed, 70 species of native plants, and the seed was put down, and then we had a giant kielbasa roast, just like, oh, so that's the very first kielbasa roast in history. All right, so moving on then, boy, I can't see that thing's blocking my, okay. Anyway, so this is about a year later, and you can see that it's starting to take shape. But there was also a lot of pushback and a lot of angst about the prairie from the people that lived immediately around it. So we had a lot of damage. Here there was about 10,000 square feet of prairie that was actually the premium parts of the prairie was just flat out mowed down by the guy that was building that house back there because the neighbors convinced him it was a good thing to do. And then another guy took a tractor and cut this donut shape in. We were working with them to change their view of the prairie as well. We went to numerous town hall meetings after town hall meetings. We just got so tired of it that we made this video and we put it on our website so people could go back and look at it as a resource. It's still there. It's a really informative video, and we use that as a tool instead of taking up so much time going to meetings. So here they are, and I can't see what year this is because this, let me see if I can move this. There we go. 2017. So this is like 3 years later, and they're out doing the quadrant sampling, and you can see that it's starting to take shape, become more mature. So the prairie for us is also like a classroom, and so we have students there all the time from MacArthur. MacArthur's about 20 minutes away, so they come out routinely and do tours. This is Agnes conducting a tour up on the left-hand corner. The kids come out and collect seeds. They have their own prairie that we did at their school. So they use the seeds that they collect, they process them, and then put them down in their prairie as well. Here's some pictures of things that are coming in. There's Ohio spiderwort. There's a nice butterfly on that, and then Agnes working with the kids. So this is roughly, I gotta move this thing, sorry. This is around 2019, and you can see it's really starting to take off and look more like, okay. Here it is in 2020. You can see it looks completely different now. It's so thick and biodiverse. There's so many pollinators at this park. It's incredible. We were out filming a film with Patrick from the Prospect Heights video group, and we were looking at all the pollinators on the plants, and then we went further back up towards the east, towards Elmhurst Road, and you had a view that you could look back and see almost 4.5 acres. And you think of all those plants that you walked by that had hundreds and maybe even 1,000 pollinators on it, and you multiply it by that giant thing, and to think it all used to be just turf grass, it was really sort of a humbling moment. So here's a picture with some pollinators. This is 2021. The Park District has just asked us permission to, they're going to do a fun run in July, so they wanted to use the path here as part of the leg of the run, so that's really cool. And so that's that takes care of the ComEd Prairie. I'm going to move on to the Nature Preserve, which is at the Gary Morava Center behind the tennis courts. It was 2016. This was our second ComEd Green Regions grant, and the executive director, Christina Ferrara, was just hired, and her and Agnes hit it off really well. And they talked about the area behind her, which was at this point just simply it was a degraded, useless acre. It did nothing ecologically. It was filled with mattresses, beer cans, syringes, and it was, of course, surrounded by the obligatory buckthorn. There's a couple more views of what it looked like. You can see how heavy the erosion was. And so of course, the first task in restoration is to start clearing away the invasives, so we spent all that time. That's Chainsaw Lewis and his son Zeke. Everybody who's in the commission knows Zeke. He has his own trail, and he's about this tall now. But the lowland was basically grass. The upland, there's two parts, it's lower and higher, and the creek bisects it. So the lower section was mostly turf grass. You can see the path is staked out there. We had all kinds of help, like including the Jail Bars Jeep Club, who was a friend of Timber, the chainsaw guy. We did a lot of, it was such a gritty place for so long. It was really interesting working there in the cold. And then this was also a Scout, Eagle Scout project. So Sam Sobchak decided to make this his Eagle Scout project, and he wanted to do the path from from Elm Street to Pine Street, build in these stairs to transition from the upper and lower, and then put stepping stones in the creek so that you could get across the creek. This is Sam. He organized 49 volunteers for that day, that work day. All told, it wrapped up with like 224 hours of labor. And this is some of the effects you can see. This place is really just a gem. And when you consider what it was, it's incredible. You can see all the Lobia cardinalis there in the background. Those are the stepping stones. There's another view of the stairs. And this is, all these celandine poppies were planted by one volunteer. What's her name? Judy Dunn. They're amazing. They're in full bloom right now, right? So if you want to see this view, it's really amazing. And then, of course, there's the obligatory signage, public installation of informational signage that goes throughout the park. All right, so we'll move on then to Heron Pond in 2017. The Park District came to us. This is a really unique little place. It's a small and sequestered little pond that Dr. Wirtz built, and he eventually created a homeowners association there that owns half of the property, and the other half is owned by the Park District, and it nestles right up to Walnut Woods, and there's only one obscure entrance to get into it. But the residents there, the homeowners association, were interested in dredging it and putting in steel seawall. And Christina reached out to Agnes and said, what can we do here? So we decided we were going to naturalize everything. So there they're putting down erosion blankets after we cleared all the buckthorn, cleared all the rest of the things. And then the blankets went in, and then that sea monster down there was planting sea lilies. That was one of our summer interns. And then we had this, John Kamish, who's not here tonight, was out walking with his dog Carter, and they stumbled across this, and it's a kid who has been playing out there, and he put up a mailbox with this envelope addressed to everyone, and it says, "Hi, it's Will. This is my special spot. I hope you like it." And then it's signed Will. Now, Will, it turns out, is Chris Wood's son. So, and they live right on Heron Pond, so. But that was really cool. So this is sort of what it looked like in 2018. We work there all the time still. We haven't been there a lot lately, but we are starting to go back, and we'll be there this Sunday. Here's the last few pictures here of John took in the fall. And people keep building things and leaving things there. So this is a strange structure that just showed up one day. It's pretty cool. So going on then to our third ComEd Green Regions grant. This is Pollinator Park. Now this is what is called Hillcrest Lake. It's really an extension of the slough. It was bisected by a road that was then, the houses around it scooped it up and turned it into a homeowners association and decided to call it Hillcrest Lake. The bottom line, it was all turf grass right down to the edge of the water. The shoreline was heavily eroded, lots of buckthorn, just the same sort of degraded conditions that existed everywhere. And so we started working on this in 2020. And you can see in the map down there, the plan was to take out that turf grass and put riparian buffers in there to retain and hold the water and filter it before it gets back into the lake. We also snuck in a pilot program for doing a little bit of shoreline restoration just to see what would happen, and we could do it. So here's, this is one of the schedules we had for the plantings, where we were actually putting in plugs and where we were seeding. We overseeded everything. This is one of the plots that we have an auger. We come out and drill, put in like 1,000, 2,000 plants every workday. Here's another, a little bit later on. This is probably later, much later in the year. You can see the path is now fully formed, and the plantings are getting more robust around it. Here's Rattlesnake Master. This is what they look like in 2021. You can see they're very, very different than just mowed turf grass. And this was the project, the area where we decided we were going to build a pilot program to restore shoreline into the grant. So this was a startup condition in the upper left-hand corner. You can see it was just a straight 2-foot drop-off and totally eroded. And the plan was to come in with erosion blankets, core logs, fill dirt, and build a tiered system to restore the shoreline naturally. Here's the volunteers planting. So they planted in, there's another picture coming up here that gives you a little better description. Well, I'll get to that. So the bottom line is that the shoreline restoration was so successful that the city decided that they wanted to create a 6-year program for $35,000 to do a chunk of this every summer. So we've currently finished 3 years, 3 phases. This is the original pilot over here on the left, on the right for year 1. Informational signage went up all over the park. This was a little game, Can You Find Me? So you could play this with your kids. And we strategically located these where you would absolutely find whatever it is the sign's having you look for. So this is in 2023. This is what that buffer looks like now, as opposed to, if you think back to that eroded shoreline, that's the difference. So this is what we're doing now all the way around the lake. This is what it'll look like all around the lake. Here's phase 1. So this is right in front of Lou's house. This was about 165 feet, I think. And again, we have 3 tiers of core logs and fill dirt. This one we used over 6,000 plugs here. This is phase 2, and this is a picture that I was talking about. So the strategy here is we put in a fence to keep the carp out because the invasive carps will uproot the aquatic plants. The aquatic plants absorb the first wave of waves as they come into the shoreline, so that's your first line of defense. Then you put in the semi-aquatic plants, the ones that can tolerate being underwater for maybe 2 to 3 weeks, and will survive. And then it's up to the prairie plants to go in and form the riparian buffer. This was phase 2 of the shoreline. So this year we're doing another chunk, it's probably about 150 feet. We also put in a solstice garden. So this was John's brainchild. And what he wanted to do was create a solstice garden that would align with the solstices with the sun. And so we did that. And here's the very first one. This was on June 21st of whatever year that was. I don't know, it's a blur. And this is right before the sun is coming up. Here's all the people. A lot of them are here tonight. You can see how amazing that is. So we go there in winter, and for the winter equinox and for the summer equinox. It's just a magical place. These two photos down here, Mara took these. What was really incredible is we found, after we did this second phase of the shoreline restoration, is that the waterfowl decided it was a great place to make nests and raise their kids. Because if there was predators, they would know they're coming up behind them. They could just jump in the water. So it was very effective and quite welcome. One night, Agnes and I were there working, and this is on the upper right-hand corner, this is the old cormorant tree. So the cormorants would always collect there. Cormorants are these two pictures on the lower right-hand, and their feathers are not waterproof, so they have to hold their wings up and let the air dry them out, and that's why you see them doing these strange things. But in the cormorant tree, we were working one night, and there were 6 black-crowned night herons. These are state endangered birds that showed up, and it was almost like a thank you for them. The 6th one took off right when I got the camera out, so there's only 5 there. And then the pollinators are doing the rest of the work that they're supposed to be doing. And with that, I'm going to give it to Jill, and she's going to tell you all about Tully Park.
Tully Park is located at Tully Place and Owen Street, just north of Euclid Avenue and Ranhurst in Prospect Heights. It is 2 acres of green space that was original prairie mixed with wet prairie, followed by agricultural during settlement of the area. About 8 years ago, residents contacted the Prospect Heights Park District requesting conversion of the area into a natural area. After approval by the Park District, Friends of Tully Park were formed with a vision to enhance diversity in wildlife habitat while maintaining open space for all to enjoy. The NRC is in an advisory position with Friends of the Tully Park area, offering knowledge, resources, and time to help the residents with this conversion. This is Wendy DeWar to the left and Marianne Siemens, who's in the audience today. They're the stewards of Tully Park. And this picture, which I'll come back to again, is the first fall workday, removing invasives and buckthorn removal, always that buckthorn. And this is another workday of the same area. This is winter 2016 in Tully Park with the beginnings of habitat development, what you can do with fallen buckthorn branches. Then in 2017, sun plants were planted along McDonald Creek, and in the photo to the bottom right, that's the southwest area after the first year of plantings and seeding in spring of 2017. Tall blue bellflower, rudbeckia, and other native plants attract birds and wildlife. The first top photo is the eastern sunny area of Tully Park after the second year of restoration. This was achieved after clearing native turfgrass and planting and seeding the area with numerous species of native pollinators. The photograph below it is the southwest area of Tully Park where you can see inland oats. The top right and bottom right photos are the north area of Tully Park near the residence of Mary Ellen and Rod Siemens, which was cleared and prepared for planting. In 2017, asters, goldenrod, sneezeweed, blue lobelia, and cardinal flower are growing and blooming. This is Tully Park in 2019. The native flowers in bloom are cardinal flower, black-eyed Susan, common boneset, prairie blazing star, to name a few. 2016, more native flowers in bloom, which attract pollinators like the monarch butterfly. The second photo has coneflower, and the third photo has swamp milkweed. Again, 2020, These are the results of planting natives such as inland oats along McDonald Creek bank, which also helps with shoreline restoration. In 2021, the Tully Park 5-year development plan was created, which includes consideration of a nature trail, expanded planting area boundaries to increase habitat and biodiversity, interpretive signage, improving the McDonald Creek water quality, engaging the community and organizations in education projects such as planting, creating pollinator and meditation gardens, butterfly houses, and maintaining multi-use open green space for family picnics, exercising dogs, and sports. Seeking grant requests could assist the Prospect Heights Park District in beautifying the access to 2014 Wheeling Road, which is property that has become vacant, which is adjacent to Tully Park in the southeast corner area. During the 5th year of restoration, Tully Park seeds were used to reseed the eastern sunny area, and then a burn was performed to clear the area and promote new growth. Numerous species of native pollinators are in bloom. Tully Park today, again with bottle brush grass that is featured.
We've seen a lot of plants and a lot of planting, and this is the photo that I showed earlier about the native plants that we purchased with $10,000. So there are 7,206 plants, which 10 years ago, that was a really good price for those plants, but that's it. So we planted those plants, and then we were done, and there were no more plants. So we decided that we were going to collect seed. So we started collecting seed from all of our sites and processing the seed. And here we go. This is all the seed that we collected. I think that was the first year. We now collect about 100 pounds of seed each year. Each year we collect that many seeds from all of our projects. And we also said, well, you know, maybe we could grow these plants. So we started greenhouses. So these are all plants that we've grown. We typically put out 99.9%, but then we grow some of those plants in our greenhouses. Here is the original startup. We used to have them in trays. Now we have them in pots. Did many different methods for growing plants. We went to Oakton Community College, Horcher Farms to find out how to grow plants. We had greenhouse space actually at Horcher Farms for a while too. So the greenhouse program now produces anywhere between 20,000 to 30,000 plants each year. So this goes to all of our projects, to Tully, to the slough, to every single project receives these plants. And then we also work with partner organizations like Poplar Creek Prairie Stewards from the Cook County Forest Preserves. So we grow special plants for them, and then they give us special seeds in return, and then they come out and transplant with us as well. So that picture, that top left-hand picture, is the Poplar Creek Prairie Stewards transplanting plants. Some of theirs, some of ours. It's just been a really great relationship. We added a holding greenhouse in addition to the greenhouse that we have. So when the temperature gets a little bit warmer, they all go into the holding greenhouse, and then we recycle our pots. So that's a nice little pyramid of washed pots on the bottom there. So transplanting, we are actually doing right now Transplant Wednesdays. Every Wednesday we meet from 5 to 6:30, and we transplant these little guys. Yeah. So they go from being in a pot of 50 plants into individual little cells, and then they go in the greenhouse until all chance of frost is over, and then some of the plants actually do grow outside as well. So it's a lot of fun, Transplant Wednesdays. The greenhouse, so we had an accident last year with our greenhouse. There was a fire with the greenhouse, and so now we have a new greenhouse. And thanks to these wonderful volunteers over there on the top left-hand side, which took days and hours to put together, there is a wonderful new greenhouse, and it has, I don't know, 10 or 15,000 plants in it at the moment, as we speak. It's completely full. I think that's actually the picture of it being full right there. Yeah. And here we go. This is our backyard. This is what it looks like in the summer. There is no yard, there's just plants. So this is 20 to 30,000 plants right there. Some of them overwinter, some of them get planted, and it's actually, they go on rotation. So like some of them get planted, then new ones come in, then more get planted, then new ones come in throughout the entire summer. That's how we're able to do that. So this is another view of all the plants, many plants. And is that, yeah, okay. And that's the greenhouse program.
So we're real close. One thing that is very, very important, you know, was critical for us was the help of many different people. First and foremost, of course, our commissioners that put their hearts and soul into the commission. And, you know, Agnes, I don't know how you do it. This is a practicing physician with a thriving medical business, really, and yet so much time can get in. I call her the Energizer Bunny. But the whole committee, you know, the whole commission in different ways really contribute, but that is dwarfed by the hard work of our volunteers. We are talking literally a couple hundred people over, not everyone's there every time, but some people come very, very often. Some people come on occasion when they can, and it doesn't matter. We are just so grateful for the help and support. Because the work itself, this is hard work. This is you know, bare knuckles into the ground and cutting. And let me tell you, buckthorn fights back. It bites and it hurts. And people pour their heart and souls, and we're just eternally grateful for all the work and effort. But it's not only that, it's the support by our institutions, the City of Prospect Heights, both staff and elected officials that are supporting us with funding, but it's more so than that. You know, the encouragement that we get as well, and I can't, I'd be remiss to to forget the Park District as well. And I'd like to point out one of the former executive directors who's here tonight, Kathy Nowicki, who was an incredible early supporter. I know Christy Ferraro now is, but really this is the OG. It started with, you know, with Kathy and this, you know, like I say, this support was critical. You know, this is public land, and you can't just go on public land and do what you want. So the support is very, very important. Of course, ComEd, with what they've done in helping us, I know they've taken a lot of hits public relation-wise, but they also do a lot of good. And the support that we've gotten through them, and, you know, of course, the Arboretum, and it's just, who else am I missing? As far as the grant funding.
The volunteers.
Yeah.
I just
So-
clicked it to the next one.
Yeah, so here's some pictures of our volunteers, and understand, this runs multi-generations. We have young children, you know, you see a lot of great, well, some of us have gray hair up here, but it really is inspiring because, you know, one thing that many organizations are dealing with now is they're aging out. You know, they have older, you know, the Kiwanis groups and even the VFWs, you know, it's hard getting new people with social media and all the distractions that they have to get involved. But it's very, very encouraging seeing the young blood that is coming into the commission, so that when we're all gone and we're just you know, a memory on a headstone somewhere, this is all going to carry on because, well, I know that sounds terrible, but it's inevitable, right? But that's one of the fears and concerns. Well, what about we do all this work, and if it stops, it will be just a matter of time before it regresses back to where it was. So we're just incredibly grateful and supportive for everybody that's helped us. And for those of you here, there's many familiar faces that give in, and it's just amazing the work that can get done. I have to tell you, there is an important financial end in it. And I just want to put it in proper perspective. So that first picture you saw, which was just a kind of a cluster of the native plants, that was $10,000. Native plants are not cheap. So the greenhouse program and the work that's being done is literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in value. But the real value comes in, and any business person will tell you this, your highest expense with almost any organization is labor. And that is something we've been very, very fortunate with the incredible actions and volunteers of people who literally put in their heart and soul in what they do. And to express the gratitude is not doing it justice. But
3,374 volunteer
Yeah, and the number of hours, and we're talking people who literally are essentially working full-time. And one thing we omitted too in the program, we do have an internship program that's funded by support, where we weren't still discussing that, right? But that's an important thing. So we have, a number of interns that literally work for the whole summer. These are college students that are in various disciplines for their degrees in the natural sciences. And the amount of work that they do is just absolutely amazing as well. So now I'd like to turn it, yes. Can't forget our rock stars, our volunteers of the year. Our very first one on the upper left is Carl Hummer. Of course, Angela, who's here. Angelique, I'm sorry, names are important, was our very second recipient of it. Norma, who's actually talking about an old G, I mean, she moved here in 1950, I think, with her family. Born here, yes. And then, of course, Maria and Linda, and Wendy Dewar in 2020, and John in 2021, and Monty, who's an incredible chef as well, I must say. Food is delicious. And then, of course, this year's recipient, Spencer. And these are people who have gone above and beyond in what they've given and contributed to the commission. And then, pardon me?
These are our summer interns.
Oh, these are the interns, okay. So yeah, we've gone, how many years with interns?
2016.
Since
first.
2016.
So 8 years.
This will be the 8th year.
And these are partially funded by the city of Prospect Heights. Did the Park District contribute? The Park District as well, and then private donations. We've gotten some incredibly generous anonymous donations that have helped to support the internship program, because at times it adds up. And for the work that they do, the value that we get from them is amazing.
Okay.
So where does it go from here? Prospect Heights is one of those magical, magnetic places where the earth energy is so strong, so complete, that you cannot help but become a part of something really special. We have worked very hard for 10 years to uncover its full potential. We have worked hard to prove ourselves to the doubters, to change prevailing attitudes and cultural norms about environment, and to drastically improve the natural habitat for birds, insects, reptiles, amphibians, and wildlife. We have sought to educate anywhere and everywhere we can. We can co-evolve. Our goal is to make this so deeply rooted in the community that it is sustainable long after we have outlived our usefulness. Succession and passion is an obsession. How we get there in our journey is the key to success: goodwill, compassion, and love of the volunteers that make it happen day after day.
And then lastly, I just want to close with a beautiful poem that's entitled The Gift of Time is Priceless, and the author is anonymous, so I'll take credit for it. Valuable is the work that you do. Outstanding is how you always come through. Loyal, sincere, and full of good cheer. Untiring in your effort throughout the year. Notable are the contributions you make, trustworthy in every project you take. Eager to reach our commission's every goal, effective in the way you fulfill your role. Ready with a smile like a shining star, special and wonderful, that's what you are.
What identifies a slough as opposed to like another ecological?
I'm giving this to Agnes because I'm just a laborer.
So a slough is actually a river that travels through a certain land area where the topography changes and allows sort of just like a bowl to form, and that's what creates a slough. So actually the slough is a tributary of McDonald Creek. So That's the technical thing about the slough. It is not an isolated wetland, so there's an inlet and an outlet, but it's just the topography. And if you're ever down there in the slough, if you look around, you can see that everything is higher up along. So Elmhurst is higher up, and all the houses are sort of on a hill, and so it's just the topography of the land, that water. Created by the glaciers.
At one point, it was connected to a stream.
It's always been connected. Still is connected, right.
Agnes, I'm curious, when you put the carp screens up on the other side between North and South Slough, was there a lot of activity you noticed there with carp?
Activity, you mean the exclosures around the plantings, or when we
Yeah,
put them
when you
between?
block the pipes to keep the carp from getting from one side to
Between the
other?
lake,
Yeah.
right, so the slough is really shallow, and then it freezes in the winter, and so the carp all go back to Hillcrest Lake. So we did, for a couple of years, we put sort of these big nets to allow everything to go through except the largest carp, and we noticed a big difference. We really did,
So
a big
it's
difference.
a big-
What happens?
It's a major part of the.
Yeah, it's much easier for the carp to spawn in the slough because it's shallow. That's where we have all the shoreline plants, and so they just tear them up. So if we keep them over at the lake, then they don't do that over there, and hopefully they'll do it over the lake.
And actually, what else happened was that Hillcrest Lake was having sort of the vegetation was overrunning it a little bit, and it was kind of green, the aquatic vegetation. So what the carp do by staying at Hillcrest Lake is they tear up that vegetation. So it's sort of like a win-win.
I was wondering when I first saw those a few years ago, if that was related to the whole Asian carp invasion thing.
Yeah, it's not
They're actually
easy.
the common carp, not Asian carp.
Yeah.
Yes?
I have a question. I often walk the bike trail that runs alongside the Canadian National Railroad. And I see workers there, volunteer workers. Is that you?
Yes. So that we didn't cover all the sites, I guess, but there's a little remnant, degraded remnant prairie right there by the railroad tracks, and then there's also what we've termed the sedge meadow. So that's another 7 and another 8 acres that we've been actively working to restore, and that's where we had one of our this year a club work day actually was at the sedge meadow, and that's been a seed source for us. So there's a lot of really great native plants right there that have persisted and survived in those areas, and so a lot of the seeds in the very beginning that we collected were from there.
So, do you do any partnership with Wheeling from that one area that goes actually from the frontage road to, what is that? Camp McDonald?
Camp McDonald. So the area is located in Wheeling, but it is that area is under a lease agreement with the Park District because of the bike path. And so 10 years ago, there was an amendment to the lease agreement so that there could be prairie restoration work on those areas. But it's actually a lease agreement between the Prospect Heights Park District and ComEd.
Kathy Nowicki actually said.
Yes, it was all thanks to Kathy that happened. Kathy Nowicki.
Agnes, can you remind us the prescribed burns that you do? What are the benefits besides tamping down the buckthorn?
So prescribed fire, we know, has been used by Native Americans for thousands of years. And we also know that the plants evolved alongside of fire for those thousands of years. So some of the plants, some of the seeds won't germinate without fire. It also restores carbon to the soil, and it removes the thatch buildup, which is important too for all those prairie plants, because prairie plants can have a lot of thatch that builds up as well. And then it suppresses the woody growth. And it's just something that, for thousands of years, fire has come through. I mean, like 60% of all the trees around here used to be oak trees, and oak trees are fire tolerant. And that's the reason that there were oak trees here, is because there was fire moving through the system. As a result of that, the fire, us not using fire, all of these weedy trees that are fire intolerant have grown up and have shaded out the oaks, and have really created a damaging effect to the ecosystem. So restoring fire back to an ecosystem is really important. And the management, I mean, you can walk out there and you see all these little baby buckthorns. I mean, it would take hours and hours and hours to cut those things down. And burning that area is really very effective.
There's a very unusual
unusual tree in the corner. It has the, like oranges, but they're not oranges.
Yes, I know what you mean.
What is it?
Yes, the Osage orange, Osage orange. It's an Osage orange or Osage orange or, yeah. Mhm. No, it wasn't, it was not planted there. Mhm.
So, new resident of Prospect Heights is 6-7 months here. But I wanted to commend, I saw the announcement in the library flyer about it. I wanted to commend the board, and I second what the county commissioners have offered up as well. And the volunteers, the work you guys have done is nothing less than amazing and transformational. So kudos to all of you for doing that. And I think you had talked about earlier with the Willow Road and Hillcrest Lake flooding issues that are going on. Does the commission have a plan around what they want to do in seeing that push towards the east end of Hillcrest Lake? I'd be curious as to your plans and ideas around that too.
Well, that's not us.
Yeah, that's a MWRD that's a major.
But I know they're talking about also getting input from different communities.
Right, so there is gonna, the Willow Road raising is going to happen, but we actually have had input with the city and MWRD because some of that shoreline and the graded slope is to be planted, and we met with them, and so it's going to be all native plants that will be planted there.
They were curious what we were using in our shoreline restorations because they wanted to use the same plants so that it would all tie together.
And in regards to the east end of Hillcrest Lake, will something be done on that side as well, like you've done on the
On Owen
west?
Court,
Oh,
Yes.
that's part of,
that's going to be raised also.
that's part of the.
Okay. That's right, that's why.
Yeah. One thing also I'd like to point out, and I'm so sorry for omitting them, but another very important partner for the commission has been the library.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously not hosting us tonight as well, and Terry Campbell, who's here, was another OG original, supporter of our commission. You know, we have we didn't mention it, but we have our Nature Speaks program where this is the who's who of natural sciences that come in and share. These are people that you can't pay them to come and do speeches like this, but they'll come and do it for free because of the amount of work and notoriety that the commission has done. But the support from the library in these programs has been very, very helpful for us to spread our message and our mission in town. And again, nothing happens alone. And the support has been deeply, deeply appreciated.
Yes. Have you ever had to remove any invasive plants that have come in, like triple loose stripe or something?
We remove many invasive plants all the time. Our workday this Sunday is going to be taking out invasive garlic mustard, pulling invasive garlic mustard. Invasive plants, yeah, I mean, they're everywhere. They come in, and you just have to be really vigilant. If you just have sometimes.
Can you get rid of that with the burn?
No. No. So it's a biennial, so it's actually really easy to pull. So, a biennial, it just has like a little rosette in the first year. The second year, it bolts with the flowers, and then it seeds. So if you can get it, if you can pull it in the second year or even clip it at the base, that's it. It's the second year of life, and that's a very effective way to manage the garlic mustard. Well, there's just, you have to be vigilant. It's like one garlic mustard. If you leave one garlic mustard, next year it'll be 1,000 garlic mustards. It's like that with the invasives. You just have to be vigilant once you clear it. And then sometimes they just persist in the soil for many years, decades. Like the buckthorn is still in the soil. They still come up from those seeds because the seeds dropped for 50 years and they're in this soil. So we cleared it and there's little guys coming up, and so you just have to be vigilant. Any other questions?
I think that's it.
That's it? Okay. Thank you.
Lastly,
Oh,
get
wait.
out there and visit these in person. If you haven't been to the slough or the boardwalk, you're in for a treat. People do yoga there.
Yes.
So come on out, whether it's the slough or Hillcrest Lake or any of these other natural areas. This is really a genuine benefit to our community that we should all enjoy, and so please do. Thank you.